60-minute webinar, Achieving Digital Transformation in the Finance Team, with experts Mike Hennigan and James Lockyer. I'd now like to hand to CPA's Jan Begg, Technology and Transformation Lead, Policy and Advocacy, to introduce your experts, Mike and James. Jan, welcome.
Thank you, Mandy, for the introduction and getting us all audio okay. I'm just going to turn my video on briefly, just so that I can wave to you all. And in case anyone's feeling like they're a bit lonely in their working at home environment. So on behalf of CPA Australia, I'd like to welcome you to the sponsored webinar, Achieving Digital Transformation in the Finance Team. We're very fortunate to have this session sponsored by Kalumo and to have Mike and James presenting to us. Now this is, I'm really excited about this one because this is very practical, and James is going to be sharing their journey with us. And for all of us living through COVID-19 at the moment, I think you'll be able to get some takeaways from this. So without any further ado, I will tell you a little bit about Michael. So Michael holds an honours degree in financial accounting and qualified as a chartered accountant. He spent over 35 years as a finance professional and has spent the last 20 years in the business intelligence industry. He's worked with hundreds of organisations of various sizes and industries that have developed a deep understanding of how business intelligence and technology can improve and support the business. So lots to draw on, so I'll encourage you along the way to put your questions in the chat box. Now, our second speaker, James, is the Director of Finance at the Arts Centre in Melbourne. I don't know how many of you on the call are based in Melbourne. That's where I am at the moment. And we all know how fabulous the Arts Centre is, and so it'll be great to get a behind-the-scenes view from James about how they've transformed their finance function. James is an ACCA Fellow with over 16 years post-qualification experience gained in national and international organisations across a variety of sectors. He's got strong financial management skills. In previous roles, he had full financial and reporting ownership of both individual sites and regions. He's had extensive experience in building complex financial and operational models to deal with complex business situations. He's obviously passionate about the arts and the culture sector in his current role, and how to really engage the whole organisation, understand the organisation, streamline the systems and processes, and remove barriers to collaborating with colleagues and stakeholders to deliver really what great finance teams can to so many of us. So thank you, Michael and James. I'll turn my video off now and hand over to Michael. Thanks.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin our presentation, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, wherever you may be. Or in my case, it's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation up in Sydney. We'd like to honour the elders, past, present and emerging. Today's talk was planned a couple of months ago, and obviously things have changed in our environment. I will be addressing a lot of that, but this is really what I see as an information afternoon, just sharing our thoughts of what we've seen happening and things you can do today. So when we start off, I'm going to quick introduction and a quick poll. There's 4 questions. I'm then going to talk about digital transformation and how to achieve it today. A little bit about artificial intelligence, and then I'm going to hand over across to James Lockyer from the Arts Centre Melbourne to give us a case study of the journey they've gone through over the last 2 years and how COVID is impacting them. Obviously, as a venue for public performances, they are very impacted. And then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A and wrap up. So for today's 4 questions, and anyone get the reference to the picture on the right, it's a blue poll or blue poll questions for today, and that was purchased by Gokwitem a while back. So the questions will come up in the right-hand panel.
Thanks, Mike. I'll just interject there and just let people know what to do. So this is the first 2 of the 4 questions. So we'll run these first 2. We've got a poll running for about a minute. Just make sure once you've chosen your selection to please click submit so it sends the responses through. We've got about 220 people to go. So if you can enter that as promptly as you can, that would be fantastic. And then once the poll closes, I'll bring up the results for Mike to talk through, and then I'll open up the next 2 questions. Thank you, everybody. Keep it coming. There's a couple of telling stories to come here, Mike.
Yep. So just to explain the questions, where you're working from today, just a bit of a demographic of where people are. The expectation is most people will be working from home. However, there's still people in essential services. Then the questions are, do you have frictionless access to all the data you need to do your job? Doesn't matter where you are. Is the computer you're working on now the same as the office computer? Or is it underpowered for what I need to do? Is working adequately for remote access? And finally, this is not a feedback for the NBN, just to know if you have enough bandwidth or network speed to work effectively.
Thanks, Mike. So the first 2 questions, I'll have the results up for you in just a second, and then I'll open the next poll.
Right, so what we can see, yeah, I've got the results. So there's still 57 people who are working from the office. The vast majority are working from home, and there's still a number who are not working or have been stood down. I'm hoping that's just a temporary measure, and there's obviously always another. So of the percentage of most people have frictionless access to all their data, which is really great to see. But there's still a lot of people who have no access, no frictionless access, or only partial access.
Okay, we're ready for the next poll.
Yep. So the context of this question. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, I was just going to say, if I've got a few people that are just joining us a bit late, I was just going to mention again to please click submit once you've popped your response through. So, and then I will close the poll very shortly and bring up those results.
So the context of the first question is one of our clients who's a government agency basically had to bring the staff back, and so people could take their workplace desktops home to give them the right computing power they had, while your other clients and other people out there, people are running a Mac computer at home or whatever they've got.
About 20 seconds to go, and just a reminder that this poll is anonymous, so please feel that you can contribute. 100 people to go. Just collating the results now for you, Mike.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, the results should be up there for you now, Mike, and just a reminder for people to get their chat box back, just double click on the chat icon on your floating toolbar at the bottom of your screen.
Right, so there's some very promising results. There's a lot of people are using the same computer as their office computer, which is a technical science to come in terms of people, some organizations using bring your own computer or you bring your own device to do your job. Definitely a couple of people underpowered, and for a lot of people they're working adequately. And again, great, maybe thanks to the NBN, but we have the vast majority of people with adequate bandwidth. Right, so guys, thanks very much for that. That gives us a little bit of context about moving forward. The next thing on the agenda is a little bit about Kalumo. This is not a sales pitch, but this position who we are and what we do. So we're an Australian-owned and managed company. We were founded in 2004 by accountants, which I think is very relevant to the audience. We provide a single product for corporate performance management, which I'll describe in the next slide, and we can be deployed on premises in the cloud or software as a service. What we pride ourselves in is a low total cost of ownership and quick implementation, and the entire solution is built on the Microsoft BI stack. So when we talk about all-in-one corporate performance management, this is dashboards, data discovery reports, budgeting, planning and forecasting, real-time reporting, ad hoc and self-service analytics. This is just a snapshot of some of our clients. If you work for any of these, you'll be familiar with Kalumo, but we span across government, small organizations, large organizations, education, etc. So let's talk a little bit about digital transformation and how it can be done quickly. So with most kind of things that I look at, we ask a question for next year is who led your digital transformation? But tongue-in-cheek, was it your CEO, CFO, CIO, or COVID-19? I'm sure a lot of you have seen that already. But this is very telling in terms of the type of disruption and changes we're experiencing right now. So if we go back and we look at digital transformation, I do what most people do, is I pop into Google, I enter a search phrase, and I get an answer. Now, it's not a very clear answer. It tells me about financial transformation, it's just finance executives. It still doesn't tell me what I have to do. So my next point of research was to go through and have a look at what some of the large consulting firms are saying, and the analysts. So McKinsey & Company in 2018 said basically 13% of CFOs are using technologies to improve their business process. And 64% of CFOs have digitized less than a quarter of their finance function in the past 12 months. And CFOs are not seeing a substantial return. When we look at Gartner, Gartner's comments are finance leaders struggle to balance increasing divide of finance and support with decreasing finance function budgets, which I'm sure we're all well aware of, and many are turning to transformation projects to managing, but only 30% are succeeding. Now you can read this two ways. One, we can say 70% of finance projects fail, or we can have a look and say, well, 30% are actually succeeding. Now, if you're launching a rocket for the first time to the moon, your expectation is failure. However, if you're flying a commercial airline, if you're still flying, your expectation is success. So when you need to try digital transformation, there's no proven methodology, and these are steps that you can go through. So trying is not the fact that other people have not succeeded is not a limiter to actually developing some kind of digital transformation. So the key question is, when we look at failure, why do they fail? And the key reasons they deliver is they don't deliver on benefits to the business and they don't meet the forecast objectives. So when people define and when we have a look at, what's happened in the last year, at the recent Gartner conference in February, we had a look and said, where does AI adoption and automation and digital transformation stand? We can see from 2019, 23% of CIOs said they will deploy in the next 12 months. Well, we only had a 2% increase. We only had a 5% increase at the top right-hand here of people who actually deployed. So people aren't deploying at the rate they have expectation. And this was all before COVID-19, so there were no of those limitations. I'm going to use a KPMG quote that said, stop transforming, start succeeding. I'm an alma mater of KPMG, but that's not the reason. I just believe in this approach to start doing something today, and we don't have to do everything in a big bang. Use an agile approach, start looking for business benefits and small gains as we go. So how do you succeed? The basic questions: when, why, who, what, and how. First of all, when. Right, let's address the elephant in the room. COVID-19 is here. Now's the time to actually make significant changes to digitization and financial transformation, which is an obvious thing to say, but more important is why do we need to do it? Because in times of change or crisis, the last thing you want to do is flying blind. We need to know where we stand as an organization, and we need the support of the finance team. And James will take you through a little bit of how the ACM have responded to COVID and how quickly they responded. So, if not now, when? So we've got to put this in context. These projects don't have to be months in planning and delivering. You can identify what you need right now to navigate the COVID-19 impact. Remove blockages, be proactive, and I'll go through the rest of the presentation how we can achieve some of these. So when we're looking at what we need to achieve is, I've jumped ahead, is let's set a baseline. Let's look at two surveys. Oh, I've really jumped ahead. I do apologize. I'm not very good on the tech. Okay. So let's address the why. The why is major motivations of why is to support the business, cost savings, increased efficiency, better processes, improved talent, and analytics from central to decentralized. So what's relevant for us right now is the ability to support the business is really important. Improved talent is how do we improve our talent? And lastly, the analytics from central to decentralized. How do we achieve these objectives? The who is, let's go back to the old adage, is people transform, technology enables. So transformation is not about replacing people. We look at a lot of the research and says, let's say we don't have the talent, we don't have the skills, we don't have the experience, which is actually incorrect. We need to not replace people, it's about changing and improving them. People need time to change. They both need elapsed time and available time. We also need the skills. And exactly as you can't teach someone to read without words, you can't teach data literacy without data. So this, I think, James, is a strong point for James, and I think he might touch on this as well. So when we look at, let's set a baseline for the proposition I'm making. So we did two surveys of pretty much the results of two surveys, the CPA Management Accounting Conference from 2018 out of 4 centers, and a large organization in excess of $2 billion in turnover that was done last year. The CPA management, we are at a straw poll and we asked, do you have enough time to do your value-adding activities and work as a management accountant or finance business partner? The overwhelming result, well, I think anything below no opinion and disagree and strongly disagree, but we had 58%, the majority who basically said they weren't able to do that. Am I able to get the right data to the right people at the right time every time? And again, the majority of people disagree that they can do that. The last question we asked was, I and those I support have full visibility from dashboard down to transaction and document when looking for root causes without needing to jump between systems. Yeah, we had a 97% response that saying people couldn't do that. They had to jump between systems and look in various sources. When we had a look at a large organization, we saw some alarming responses. That 70% of the average time of respondents spent on running reports or manipulating Excel spreadsheets. 69% had little or no satisfaction with the tools and the processes, but yet with all of that, only 30% were decidedly comfortable in the accuracy of the reports and results. This happens when you're doing a lot of manual processes, a lot of steps, and then you're relying on Excel and everything else around there. So very definitely, we can see that most people don't have the time to transform and to focus their attention on different types of projects and how they can be more effective business partners. So what do you need to do? What can you do right now? We talk about robotic process automation. That generally, and this is why benefits are often not received, because what somebody will embark on a process and says, oh, what we're doing is we're replacing people with machines, so we no longer need 5 individuals going through and loading invoices into the system. What we can do now is let a machine do that or get a chatbot to do something instead of a human. that doesn't free up people to do what's necessary. So what I'm sort of proposing is free up the most valuable members in your team, which are your management accountants and your accounting team and your finance team. They have knowledge of the business, they have knowledge of the information, and how do you share that information? So automate the reporting. Take that 70% spent time wrangling Excel and make that available. To do that, providing systems and tools, it doesn't have to be us, but just do something to make that automated. Teach your team to design and build actionable reports. Rather than just delivering flat information, which they've always done that, an actionable report. Put a question in the report. Get a feedback and commentary. Build reports with multiple uses. Don't just do a report because it's traditionally been there. Do something that actually has value. And how do you find out what has value? You spend time partnering with the business to find out what they need to know. Build once and forget. Once you've done a report, it shouldn't be a wash, rinse, and repeat process. Systemize your planning. This is essential at this time. Build business models with central drivers and assumptions that can be flexed. This was a slide that I presented over a year ago, and nothing really has changed except the situation we're in now demands it at a higher level. Increase collaboration and distribute the data gathering. Facilitate the consolidations and iterations. Reusable for budgets and forecasts, long-term forecasts, short-term forecasts, and integrate with actuals so we know what's going on. How? Develop greater insights. Work with the business to increase financial and data literacy. Get a better understanding of the business. You have, most people who are in a financial management accounting role have knowledge of the numbers, but don't get enough time, I certainly didn't, to get out and speak to the business to understand what was happening there and what their needs were and what were the impacts and what were the KPIs were they impacting them. Identify business processes that can be improved. Build your KPIs that are more meaningful, and change your forecasting and planning methodologies to be more reflective of how the business operates. So the skills you need are not better Excel skills, or building reporting and planning solutions. That's not your area of expertise. That's the area of expertise of professionals. People like us and other companies out there who deliver these solutions. They're accountable for what they do. They're skilled at something they do every day of the week. Start building a data source that can be used for artificial intelligence. I'm going to come back to this. This is a bit of an issue at the moment. And use of statistical methodologies and machine learning. Add people to your team that are not necessarily humans, but we can use technology for that. And then bring it all together. Build a plan. Identify your variances from your plan or your previous year. Right now, everyone's looking at differences, positive and negative. Capture the reason and impact. Update the plan. Identify the gap, and work towards reducing or managing that gap. I had a whole section on artificial intelligence. I will go through the background and the basics of artificial intelligence as we look at it. So artificial intelligence has become one of those all-encompassing buzzwords for anything from running a macro in Excel to cognitive analytics by a machine. So from my perspective, or from our perspective, we like to position it as a process, as a step process, starting with the doing, and the machine doing the doing, to the machine doing the thinking. So the first step in this process is robotic desktop automation with manual intervention. Now, anyone who's worked with an Excel spreadsheet can tick that box. Yes, we have AI, because we've got an Excel spreadsheet that I put some numbers in and it calculates the results for me. The next step is robotic process automation. Get the machine to do repetitive tasks and self-service. So doing automated reporting and analysis where the system will go and grab the data from the underlying sources, pump it into an engine that will massage it, bring the numbers out, aggregate, consolidate, and deliver those reports without having people to interfere in that process and deliver that process is robotic process automation. Releases a lot of hard-value resources in the organization. We can then go onto machine learning. So this is process-driven. Now we have data-driven. The machine learning can't work unless we've got data. We need data for the machine to actually learn from. And then once we've got that data, we can go to artificial intelligence with deductive analytics and deductive reasoning. To be honest, we're not here yet. I can't think of an example where artificial intelligence with deductive or cognitive analytics is actually working. So if we have a look at what's out there, there's great stuff that you can download. Microsoft have an option, which is sentiment recognition, ChatGPT TV cameras can be integrated to bring out the demographics of people walking past as well as the emotions, happy, sad, etc. We have shopping bots, shopping suggestions. This is built on data analytics and data mining. So if you bought a baseball bat, what's the next thing you might be interested in buying? A baseball mitt, or maybe a mask and a knuckle duster. And then obviously we have self-driving vehicles. If we break it down, these are all just machine learning applications. We don't have the ability for a vehicle to make a decision in a situation that it's never encountered or never been programmed to do. We can come back to that if anyone's really interested. So with machine learning, you can regularly project forward a view on important trends to spark relevant and actionable conversation that previously was too time-consuming to regularly contemplate. The machines are now doing that process and doing that for you. So beyond the hype and the press releases, and this is where I'm going to deviate slightly from the planned presentation from a month ago, is machine learning projects are not just for massive enterprise. You probably already have the data and you might already have the talent. So 2 examples in the real world. One is a forecasting production and professional service firm, how we can predict timesheets. And the second is forecasting food and beverage spend at hospitality venues. However, well-formed data about the past is no longer relevant. So a lot of machine learning, predictive analytics capabilities, all of that, we can't rely on the past now because we've never experienced COVID-19, we've never experienced the impacts we experience now. From every person who's impacted, from the individual spending habits and lockdowns and working from home to large organizations impacted by the impacts of COVID-19. So these are pretty much out the window. So what do we do if we don't have this capability? Well, we've had a natural evolution where we've ended up with AI. Unfortunately, people, it's time to take one step back. We now need to rely on human intervention and what we know and what we think. The things that we've never faced before, we now need to face and deal with. So if we look at top priorities for Scott Morrison's The New Normal, which changes on a daily, if not a weekly basis, we need the ability to forecast and reforecast as scenarios change. We need driver-based models and do what if. We don't know what the outcomes are. We need to build models that will effectively tell us what will happen if certain scenarios arise. We need this data accessible. We can't have it sitting on a mainframe somewhere in the organization. It needs to be in the hands of the accountants and the people who are doing this analysis. We now go potentially to daily reporting. Weekly, monthly reporting is no longer relevant. Too much happens in the space of 4 weeks. We need to understand our business. We need to segment our business and see what's impacted and what's not impacted. We need to do a huge amount of ad hoc analytics, and we need to be responsive. So with all of these are tools that management accountants and financial accountants have developed over the years to use these analytical skills and say, how can I look at my business, how it's operating? No longer predetermining what budgets and forecasts are. So how can Kalumo help? Well, Kalumo, we can roll out on the cloud within a matter of hours on a subscription model. Low-end user hardware requirements. If you've got a MacBook at home, you can still run a lot of your analytics. We can provide a reporting and forecasting solution from scratch in 4 to 6 weeks. With a data warehouse with transactional information, multi-dimensional cubes with slice and dice functionality, business modeling on your organization, and driver-based models. Your investment is half to 3/4 of an annual FTE, and there's a monthly subscription. So guys, that doesn't give you the you-beaut everything you can eat type of solution, but it gives you something that you can work with and you can attack, and you can deal with the current environment. We received an unsolicited text from one of our clients, and this is what he said. He's an ASX-listed company, and I'm going to read it out. All I can say is that I'm thankful we literally got all of our reporting and forecasting in place in Kalumo by Feb. Maybe it's knowing we can spin up new forecasts to scenario tests within minutes, or maybe it's just knowing where we are globally every day. But ultimately, I'm sure I would have imploded if I was still using the old systems we had. If there's any further information, we'll be sending Slide back out. There's our contact details. You can contact me at any time by email, telephone, or log into our website. Thanks very much for your time and attendance. Are there any questions that we need to address right now?
I'm not seeing any in the chat. Oh, sorry, I'm doing Jan's job there.
Thank you, Mandy. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Just wondering, we haven't seen any questions go into the chat, but obviously the forward-looking, more out there AI solutions and that you mentioned, people are pulling back from that and really focusing on what they've got today. And I just wondered whether you've noticed a change in the sort of dashboards that people are trying to portray to their organisation. I know certainly within other organisations I'm involved with, the board is asking for different metrics and different dashboards just to track how things are going in the business. So have you got a quick answer to that before we go on to James?
Sure, Jan. Yeah, I think the key word here is agility, the ability to change. So we're seeing a lot of our clients and people really adapting and saying, you know, the monthly reporting, the month-end process is rather irrelevant as opposed to daily reporting and reforecasting and refinancing. So people are now, as I said earlier in the slide, they need to segment their business. Which of our customers are impacted, which of our customers aren't impacted, which of our services or which of our functions are impacted and which aren't, and then build assumptions around how that could potentially roll out over the next couple of months. And also we're talking about a June lockdown till June, or the virus licensing for June. A lot of people are saying, well, we're adjusting to immediate responses and we're responding to immediate needs, but we've got to look at a number of different scenarios. So scenario planning, dashboards are now saying scenario A, B, C, and D, worst case, best case, and then describing that. And there's a lot more commentary around the type of decisions or assumptions people are making in building those forecasts. I think James will have a little bit more to say about that, so I don't want to take any more of his time, but really happy to hand across to James right now.
Thanks, Mike. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jan. So I thought, first of all, I'd just touch briefly on Arts Centre Melbourne, and you know, for many of you that are based in Melbourne, it'll be a familiar icon on the landscape in the city. But for those of you that are a little bit less familiar, I thought I'd just touch on a little bit about us with some context. So we're a not-for-profit statutory authority of the Victorian Government, and as such, we've got a piece of legislation that sets out what we are there to do and the functions of the trust. Really, it's about promotion and bolstering of the performing arts sector. But we have a huge portfolio of activities really around things like education and maintaining a collection, which is quite extensive. And so there's a lot of words there. Those are the sort of the themes that come through in the piece of legislation. But in terms of what that practically means, we're a multi-venue arts centre. We've got 5 performance venues, and we have a large part of our business that undertakes the commissioning and curation of new work. So we work with independent artists, small and medium-sized arts organisations to create new work to feature on our stages, but also to tour nationally and internationally. Our education remit, we have about 60,000 students who come through our doors each year and participate in the education programs that we run. And included in that education program, we have facilities that include music studios, recording studios that also form part of those programs. We run participation events that are largely free events and attract hundreds of thousands of people across the year through different means. And it's really about getting people to engage, members of the public to engage with the performing arts and in a more informal way. We're a registered training organisation, and we train production crews, not just for our own venues, but for venues all across Victoria. We also have a Sunday market that ordinarily would be running outside of COVID restrictions, and we have a works of art collection. And then that brings me on to the Australian Performing Arts Collection and the Australian Music Vault. So our Australian Music Vault is a contemporary permanent exhibition for the contemporary music industry. Our Performing Arts Collection has about 600,000 items in it. That's costumes, that's scripts, it's set designs, you name it. We've got all those items in our Performing Arts Collection. And then finally, one of the other purpose-driven activities that we do is we operate the Arts Wellbeing Collective. The performing arts sector has a much greater issue with mental health wellbeing, particularly compared to the national average across other industries. And so we decided that we needed to do something for our staff. And in developing that offer of what we were looking to do for our own staff, we realized that there actually is nothing for the industry. And so this became a collective that was made available more broadly across Victoria, and we've got over 150,000 organisations that can access the Arts Wellbeing Collective free of charge. It's supported by fundraising activities, and recently we have joined up with an organisation called Support Act to provide that sort of mental health support for the industry more broadly across the whole of Australia. And of course, during this COVID-19, one of the sectors that is most seriously impacted is arts and culture, and so the likes of that support mechanism for the industry has become really important. I mentioned our 5 venues. They range from the State Theatre, Hamer Hall, that have capacities of between 2,000 and 2,500. We've got 2 smaller performing arts indoor venues, Fairfax Studio and Playhouse. And then many of you will be familiar with the Sydney Myer Music Bowl with a capacity of 12,000 over in the Botanic Gardens. And so that's another of the venues that we operate. We've got other spaces. We obviously have restaurants, bars and cafes and lounges. We have a big conference meetings and events business using other spaces within our building, and we have a car park. So just moving on to our business model, what I present here is sort of a tiered approach of our business model. We've got all those mission-driven activities that I talked about, those things that are articulated in the legislation. They're the core purpose of why we exist. Then if I jump down to the bottom, there's the facilities and business support. So that's maintaining the buildings, opening the doors, and being able to support the organisation to operate. And then in the middle there, we've got our commercial activities tier. And that's whether it be our food and beverage business, our conference meetings and events business, and all the work that we do with external presenters, because a large proportion of the events that are held on our stages are external presenters that we are working with, rather than it be all of our activity is Arts Centre Melbourne Presents activity. So in that visual, as a good analogy, I tend to liken this to the Tim Tam, where you've got the mission-driven activities and the cost of opening the buildings and operating sandwiched together and held together by that the commercial activities tier. And that's really relevant and really obvious when we move on to looking at our revenue and expenses and looking at the revenue model. 20% of our revenue is Victorian government-based funding, but 80% is self-generated income. In terms of our expenses, over 50% of our expenses are employee expenses. So it's then helpful to think about the drivers behind our business. What I've got in those green teal colours at the top is really our presenter economy. That's the people we're working with in order to curate and put events on to our stages. And those flow over into the purple areas where those events attract visitation, That visitation comes with sitting income, food and beverage activity, car park activity. And so there's a very clear driver-based model, which we'll come back to in a moment. We've also then got the yellow areas that I talked on there a moment ago, really about the conference, meetings and events business, and a different type of event than happens on our stages. So a driver-based model like this, a very complex business, it faces a lot of challenges for budgeting. And that's my visual representation of what budgeting used to be like, and I'm pretty sure this will be familiar to many people. We had an awful lot of information that was in spreadsheets. We had an awful lot of information that was in people's heads. And the process of just collating a budget was so painful. The timescales that involved were huge. And the inaccessibility of data, very complex IT architecture with disconnected systems and multiple systems made it very hard to access the data that we needed. As I said, a vast number of spreadsheets, lots of those bits of modeling were all disconnected, information going into one spreadsheet and then take the outputs of that and put it into another one. And this process would flow on and on through multitudes of spreadsheets. We had centers of knowledge and a lot of reliance on individuals, particularly where information was in people's heads, and a lack of transparency of that information that was informing the budget. It was time-consuming to put together. But this next point around the proportion of time is a really important one. 90% of the team's time was spent on just gathering data, putting information into spreadsheets, manipulating data, and then a very, very small amount was spent on the analytics and the commentary and actually telling the story behind it. And really, the lengthiness of that process meant that analysis and commentary was not given the sufficient time that it needed to do it justice and to be able to truly tell the story. It was a complex process to navigate. Excel was really our only tool, and we had a huge reliance on IT for reporting, for writing any reports out of our underlying systems. And as a result, there was just so much noise. The message gets lost, but trying to tell the story was very, very hard. So I made a commitment to the team after the first round of doing budgeting in this old way when I first joined the organisation. I said, we will not do this again without investing in proper tools to be able to do this in a more intelligent way. But whilst we're at it, let's think about the other benefits that we can develop aside from just transforming budgeting and forecasting. So clearly, being able to bring data together from the plethora of systems that we had supporting our organisation would be extremely valuable. Creating a self-service environment where we're able to have information in cloud-based reporting solutions where our users can access what they want when they want it. The ability to create insightful dashboards so that the information that we supply to our users is digestible. It tells them the story when they first look at the information. And being able to put the data back in the hands of the users. The ironic thing is that our users are the people who are managing all of the different business units across the organisation that are generating this data in our systems. But they just have no way to be able to use that information sensibly. So what we've been able to do, and I'll come on to it in a little bit more detail, is to implement a solution and leverage that data, put it back into the hands of the user so that it can inform what they do without needing a huge effort in finance or elsewhere in the business to be providing those insights. And finally, we also wanted to have the benefit of integrated reporting. And so that's where, with our requirements gathering and checking out the market, that's where we came to partner with Kalumo to develop our solution. But firstly, on the budgeting, planning and forecasting, what we did, Kalumo cloud-based solution, we integrated two of our underpinning systems. We took our event management and ERP system, which is our finance system is integrated into this industry-specific event management system that we use, and we took our HRIS system and incorporated both of those data sources into Columo. They are the key systems that drive our budgeting and forecasting processes. Within Columo, then, we built the models together with Columo that hold our business drivers and our assumptions. So thinking about our events profile, for example, we have a number of resident companies. We have the Australian Ballet of Australia, Melbourne Theatre Company, Melbourne Symphony Orchestra as our major resident companies. We also have a whole heap of other presenters that we work with. And each of those presenters' events, or the genre of the event, drives different outcomes. It drives different demographics of audience. It drives different buyer behaviours when they're on site. And with all the data that we had, we understand those drivers really, really well. So what we've built into Columo is all of those business drivers and assumptions, such that the data feeds coming in from our underpinning systems, we can apply through the models those business drivers and assumptions and get very quick views as to the expected outcome based on that event's profile. And that means that we can then spend the time on the analysis, on the interrogation, are our assumptions right, what should we be looking to achieve over the future. So those business drivers, if we take this middle section here, this is really what I was talking about in terms of the Tim Tam. All of this area here is in relation to the commercial activities and thinking about the drivers that we have for that part of the business. What we've been able to do is to take these bits of information around events and venue utilization and org structure from data system feeds, and then all of those areas just circled in purple are based on assumptions that we have incorporated into our business model, and they're fully editable. With the budgeting and forecasting tools that we have with Columo, we can do scenario analysis, and very quickly we can replicate scenarios, change some of those assumptions, and see what are the outcomes that we have. That means that it's very quick and easy to be able to do what-if analysis, as Mike talked about. And through automating a lot of that process, simplifying the process, then we can get outcomes much, much more quickly than we ever could before in a manual forecasting and planning world. So with the additional data sources that I mentioned, we said, why not leverage all of the information that we have with our underpinning systems and get more of that data in. So in addition to the event management and HRIS information, we built in our rostering, time and attendance, our food and beverage point of sale systems, our car park point of sale systems, our ticketing and CRM systems. We have then brought in two other data sources that are external to ACM, but are quite useful to be able to provide a whole holistic context for what we do. The City of Melbourne has pedestrian counters throughout the city, and we've been able to take the data that's on their open architecture website, incorporate that in so that we can build it into our analysis of metrics, and also weather data. So I just want to do a very quick poll before I continue on the last few of my slides, just to see how many people on the webinar have access to multi-data source business intelligence and corporate performance management solutions. This would be interesting to just get a sense of the capacity that is out there for incorporating multiple sources of data into reporting.
Thanks, James. We've got 35 seconds to go. Just a reminder to please click submit so it sends your responses through. Ten seconds and then I'll close the poll. Just collating results and should have those up for you in about 9 seconds.
Interesting. So a surprisingly small proportion who have implemented a solution or are in the process of implementing a solution. Whilst I expected no to be the majority, that's quite a big proportion. Really, what I wanted to do was just to get a sense of that, because, as I say, incorporating multiple data sources into reporting and particularly being able to leverage it for the purpose of driver-based budgeting and analytics is really, really useful. From our management reporting perspective, with all those data sources and the tools that Kalumo provides us with, is a much more intuitive reporting interface, and having the data at our fingertips, we can quickly provide useful reporting. And as Mike was saying, really to focus on dynamic reporting that's a build once and then it serves multiple purposes and doesn't need to be replicated each time somebody wants to get a view on that information again. We can provide that information. Being a cloud-based solution, we can provide that information anywhere, anytime, through any device. And that's one of the huge benefits that we've seen over the past 12 to 18 months in implementing. Reporting is all very, very easily configurable, and the integration, of course. So what Mike didn't touch on in a great amount of detail is the integration with Office products. And what we have the capacity to do is to pull analytics from Kalumo straight into Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, so that we can build commentary documents or presentations that pull that data from Kalumo. It means that we're able to pull all of the charts or all of the data tables into that analysis, and we're even able to pull specific fields of data. So we can write sentences where the operating result for the month is, and pull that data. It means that from a month-on-month perspective, you can quickly refresh that information for the new month, and to have commentary documents or presentations significantly populated automatically. I also have just put the Teams logo down here as well, because last year we implemented Teams across the organisation. Very timely. It's been extremely useful to be in an Office 365 and Teams environment in the current circumstances. So that's not to be overlooked. What we're doing now is when we're doing month-end reporting for the last 6 months or so, all of that communication is happening through Teams. Month-end result, the flash result will be locked down. That's sent out via a link to Teams, takes all of our users directly to Kalumo to look at that information. So what we're doing, we're creating dashboards that provide information at touch, and particularly being able to highlight to people at a glance what they need to know. Are we up or down on forecast? Looking at metrics and being able to pull all sorts of more creative ways to look at the data rather than just specifying numbers, actually looking at metrics of revenue per performance attendee, or even with the amount of people data that we've got in there, starting to look at our activity, our revenue against FTEs, for example. This is a snapshot from one of our dashboards with all of our people data, all of our people statistics. And so again, at the click of a button, you can see the demographics and the trend over multiple years or in relation to our people data. And down the side there, we've got the slices that very quickly different departments, different department heads can look specifically at their own area, and a click of a button presents all that information for their own portfolios. We're able to incorporate Bing maps into there as well. So this is an example of how we've got all of our nationality of our team plotted visually as well, just to illustrate the capacity that this provides us. So the benefits that we've realized, this is sort of expanded the organizational reach of finance hugely. We've equipped finance with the data tools and an increased skill set to do their roles. And one of the things that's really telling, we do an engagement survey across the organization every year for the past 3 years. And what has been really telling, finance engagement has increased at a far faster rate than the rest of the organization. And particularly when you delve down into particular aspects of questions, one of the areas that's improved so significantly is I have the tools to do my job. So really looking at tools and systems and processes, that's where we've seen a huge increase in the ranking across the finance team. We've eliminated a whole heap of month-end processes because we can automate certain things. Manual analysis, we've progressively built more and more reporting that is on-demand, repetitive, so that you don't have to continually update data and send out new reports. Our analytics capabilities and responsiveness, consistency, accuracy, all the things that you would expect to see, time saving and continuous improvement. And there's a huge list of other things that we could do with Kalimo in due course and are on the roadmap. So COVID-19 is something of a live case study. We closed our venues 4 weeks ago. Needless to say, as you saw in the revenue overview, 80% of our revenues rely upon the doors being open and our venues being busy. So no underestimating the challenge that this poses to us. We are, of course, working through all the implications with the Victorian Government still, but there's a few things that I ought to just highlight to you. One of which is, it would be remiss of me not to highlight an initiative that we've launched called ACM Together With You, providing digital content on our website relating to performance, our education programs, participation programs, and the collection that we have. So certainly go and Google ACM Together With You. Secondly, how digital transformation has aided us in these challenging times. We, of course, have been doing huge amounts of scenario planning, looking at different timescales, the duration of these restrictions, looking at different cost control measures, and the recovery period, because nobody expects the doors to reopen and us to be back to usual operating levels. The agility of our modelling has been fantastic. Robust base data on which we can set all of our scenario analysis, and the comprehensive data sets that we've got available. And as Mike included a quote earlier on from one of their customers, these are a couple of quotes that we've had from our Board of Trustees and our CEO, really just demonstrating the appreciation from across the organisation for having these kind of tools available. So I just wanted to wrap up quickly with some key learnings, because given the number of you that haven't yet embarked on a program like this or are in the process of embarking on it, there's some useful tips here that we've taken from this. Really bite-sized chunks, break this down because it's a huge, it can be a huge project depending on the size of your ambition. So breaking it down into realizable chunks, it's better to get one win under your belt and then move on to the next bit. And having a really clear waiting room concept, you will find through the organisation many people are really keen to get Kalimo working for them. And so by having a waiting room concept, you can sort of stage that and do the right things at the right time and get the best value, best bang for your buck. Challenging the protocol, simplifying where possible. What you'll find is there's a tendency to replicate what you're familiar with. So this is the perfect opportunity to question the value of what you do, why you do it, and how you do it, and to design it in a different way. And I think having tools like this, even now, we still assess and say, we could probably simplify this further because we can be very, very specific about our business drivers and assumptions, but does it result in a different outcome compared to a more high-level assumption? It really does show that you can simplify. don't let your current data quality hold you back. I've had many conversations with people saying we couldn't possibly embark on this because our data quality is too poor and there's a big exercise that needs to happen first. One thing that is really evident is you implement a solution like this and it will highlight where your data quality issues are, so it becomes a very, very useful tool in working through that data quality issue. Thinking ahead and considering the future requirements when making decisions now, really the key thing here is that you need to think ahead to what you might be wanting to do with the data that you're bringing in, and therefore that affects how you bring it in, or with your reporting even, what uses you might want to get from this reporting, and therefore be able to design it in a more dynamic way. And don't underestimate the value of training. I think that data literacy point that Mike mentioned, having tools like this really does allow a different way of thinking in performing our roles as finance professionals. Thinking about data structure, understanding the data structure, particularly in the development phase, is really useful, and really ensuring that the team have everything that they need to succeed when a solution like this goes live. That's all I was going to cover in terms of our ACM journey. It's been a phenomenal 18 months, 2 years, and the benefits have been enormous with a lot still to go. I can see some questions have been winging through. I haven't been able to read them whilst presenting, so I might just hand back to Jan, and you can highlight anything that I may have missed, Jan.
Thank you, James. Thank you for so generously sharing with everybody the journey that you've had, and for those of us who understand what an important part the arts are in our day-to-day life, and we miss being able to go to the fabulous things that you put on at the Arts Centre, so we'll certainly help support you in whatever way we can through your online endeavours. Now, I think we've had a number of questions. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Winnie, Peter, and Matthew. Mike has answered a few of them. I think the answers to most of them are in the presentation, so thank you for a very comprehensive presentation, and I'm sure people can follow up directly with Mike and James as well. Bianca has let you know that the presentation will be available, and I think it's been a very informative session from the feedback that I've seen in the chat, and we really appreciate you both spending the time today, and the over nearly 500 participants who spent an hour with us. Thank you all for signing in, and on behalf of CPA Australia, I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jan, and big thank you to Mike and James for all their energy today. Just a quick reminder, as you exit the session, if you did enjoy it, we'd love to get your feedback. So when you exit this particular webinar, you'll be shown an external site message. Please bypass that so that you can go through and just complete 30 seconds worth of your thoughts for CPA and also for our speakers. We hope you stay safe. Please have a pleasant afternoon. Cheerio.